After being scammed by Chime, one of the largest fintech banking startups, I wanted to compare it to Varo Money to see which one has the most customer complaints. Varo is an also fairly large banking startup. Now, they're not called banks. They're not allowed to be called a bank. Well, actually, Varo is, but Chime is not. Now, Varo Money, for example, Varo Money raised $992 million. That's quite a bit. Chime has raised even more money, $2.3 billion. With all this money they've raised, you would think that they would have good customer ratings, but they have horrible customer ratings. Now, the Chime uses the Bancorp Bank and they use Stride Bank. Now, the Bancorp Bank has had 769 customer complaints in the last 3 years. Just like on the last video, I compared all these complaints in the last 3 years. I'm going to take this number and I'm going to take Stride Bank and add the 232 complaints in the last 3 years. And I'm going to add that to the Chime complaints in the last 3 years. Then we're going to compare it to the total assets for both of these banks. So just to give you an example how bad Chime is, it's got an F rating, and it's despite this 4.01 customer reviews rating, which is pretty high, the customer complaints is 7,900 in the last 3 years. Now that's actually, I think, more than Bank of America, which is much larger. So I've taken the two banks that Chime uses. Since they're not a bank, they have two third-party banks that they use to do their business. So what I've done is I've looked at both of these third-party banks. I've added up their total assets, and I've added up both of their total assets, and I'm comparing all of the customer complaints for Chime by the Better Business Bureau to their total assets, just like I did the other banks. This is actually being very generous to Chime because Stride Bank is a third-party bank that actually has locations. So some of their business has nothing to do with Chime, and I'm adding up their assets, and we're comparing all the complaints to some of the business that they're doing that we really shouldn't compare, but I don't know how to remove that because I don't have the access to that data. Also, the Bancorp Bank, some of their business has nothing to do with Chime, and I'm adding up all of their assets. So we're comparing two third-party companies that have more business than just what Chime is giving them. But we're comparing all of the complaints for both of them to the total assets. The lowest amount of complaints from last time was Valley National Bank at the top. And then as we work our way down, the complaints get more numerous. The highest were the credit card companies near the bottom. So Capital One, SoFi, Synchrony Financial, and there was 6 zeros at the top for Chase for most of these. As we work our way towards the bottom, we've got 5 zeros here for SoFi and Synchrony instead of 6. So it's many times worse than the ones at the top, many times more complaints. Now Chime has a F rating. When we added up both of the assets from Bancorp and Stride Bank, it's $11 billion. $11 billion total assets. And we've got 9,728 complaints, almost as much as Capital One. And look at Capital One has $455 billion in assets, whereas Chime only has, those two banks only have $11 billion. Now, even when we compare this, the two worst out of all of them, now when we go to the very top, even the largest bank out of all these with $3.6 trillion was JP Morgan. They only had 4,358 complaints. So Chime has more complaints than that. And they're not off, as far as I know, they don't have a credit card. It's mostly banking. So very bad. And you look at the zeros, there's 4 zeros. There's, it's missing two zeros. So much worse. And it's got an F rating and it's got warnings. So when we look at this pie chart here, Varo Money is still the worst because it has hardly any assets. It's a very small, not very many deposits or assets. So Varo Money, as far as this pie chart is a percentage, it's the worst. But Chime, when it's linked to the banks, the two third-party banks that have other business, it's still the second worst. And then the next one is Synchrony Bank, and then SoFi. And then you've got a bunch of credit card companies. So Despite having all this money that they've raised, I wouldn't touch Chime or Varo money. And I've got Varo money that I signed up with, but I spend the money that I put in there, and I'm expecting them to steal from me any day. So as soon as I get the bonus, I'm taking the money out. I'm not doing anything. I'm not logging in. Like I'm basically walking on eggshells around these two companies because they're both known to close accounts and scam people. So I wouldn't sign up for either one of these. I wouldn't sign up for either one of these based on based on the high number of account closures and customer issues. I mean, this is just off the charts compared to these huge financial companies which have a way lower percentage. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so that you'll get notified when I put out new content. Have a good one.